Well, how are we doing, everybody? Thank you guys so much for joining online with us tonight as we stream to you once again from the summit. I just want to say welcome if you are visiting with us. I would love for you to fill out this connect card here in the chat window. Let us know who's watching. If there's anything we can be praying for you about, you can do so by clicking the live prayer button. You'll join a live prayer with one of either myself or one of our other pastors, and we'd love to journey through life together with you and pray with you. If you are able to, I encourage you to share this link in the chat window to send that to somebody who needs to be encouraged, so that's someone that needs to hear the story of Jesus, to hear about the transforming power that you've experienced through the Holy Spirit. And I'm excited that we can gather here tonight online. I long for the day where we can see you all, not through a camera lens or through a FaceTime or a Zoom camera. I long for the day where we can spend time together in person and in fellowship. But right now, we still can't do that. We as a faith family have set aside June 7th as our target date to come back to church. But even then, coming back to church will look a little different. It may not be the same than what you are used to. We might have more services than what we normally do. We're going to have social distancing. The sanctuary looks a lot different. Different rooms will be used for overflow. Different rooms might have streaming. Some of it'll be completely different than what we are used to, but we will still be the church. We will still gather and worship together as a faith family. Now, how does that apply to Sunday nights? We still don't know yet. That is still TBD, to be determined. We're still trying to figure out a good plan for us on Sunday nights and just for us as engaging with you guys as youth. But right now, we are praying that when June 7th comes around, we start gathering together. Hopefully, there's a moment where we can find a way to be creative, to interact and engage with you all in person, but doing so in a safe manner. So I just ask that you pray for that. Pray for us to have wisdom from God to know exactly how we best need to do that, how to best prepare for you. But in the meantime, we're going to continue coming to you guys online like this. Keep putting out content for you guys to grow. This week, we will not have any daily Bible studies. We were taking just a week off. We'll come back to you online after Memorial Day. There will be no summit on Memorial Day weekend next weekend, so just remember that. But I still encourage you all to meet through Zoom, meet through FaceTime, Snaps, whatever, on Instagram, however best you guys are interacting with one another. Continue to do that. This is a crazy season, as you all have known. I feel like we are in day 60. I don't know. I've already lost track. If you watched our Sunday morning service this morning, the Everlys opened up the video and they said it feels like day 6,000. And I'm in total agreement with that. It feels like it's been forever. I miss you guys. I miss seeing you. I miss like being able to hear you all sing on Sunday night. I miss being able to mess with some of you guys. And I also just miss being able to spend time with you all. I look forward to doing that again. And what I think the biggest blessing coming out of this season, when we come out of this season, what I think will be one of the biggest blessings for myself, for you, as our church, and also just as our culture, is how much we depend on one another, how much we need one another. You see, I just miss interacting with people. I'm sure you might be the same. I want to spend time with one another. I want to spend time with people. You know, it's been good being in home with Katie and with Sadie. And I love the walks that we get to go on. I love interacting and spending time with my wife. And Sadie's crawling, Sadie's waving. I feel like she's gonna start walking any second. As amazing as that is, I miss seeing other people too. I've been able to spend time with some of your youth leaders like Joe and Kendrick. We've been playing disc golf. I promise at a safe distance, always 6 feet apart. But we've been spending time playing disc golf a lot, and that's been a lot of fun. And just spending time interacting and sharing life together. My small group has tried to communicate and text with people, or my adult small group, just texting with one another, encouraging one another, just trying to spend time with one another. But I miss seeing people in person. My biggest days of interaction is when I'm playing disc golf or when I'm filming for Sunday mornings at church, when I get to see for a moment our pastoral staff. I get to see some of our worship band and just to spend time with them. And it's more work than it is fellowship. We don't really have time to just sit around and talk. We don't have time to sit around and chat and share life because we've had to keep that number who've been involved in the services so small because of this, the social distancing, but also just to protect everybody, protect all the families. We've kept that number so small. And so we've really only been engaging in brief moments, but from a distance. But we miss people. You know, even the other night, I was at Lowe's, and we've added blinds to our new sunroom, as you can see behind me. That I had to go out and buy a bunch of blinds, and the only one that had it was Southside Lowe's, and I don't like going to Lowe's. Just being honest, I don't like going to Lowe's. For those of you who are Parks and Recreation, I always want to quote Ron Swanson when somebody asks me for help. I just want to say, I know more than you and walk away. I promise I'm not saying that. I really don't know more than him. But it just really bothers me when I walk into Lowe's for whatever reason. I don't know. So I'm walking around Lowe's, and I've actually enjoyed social distancing at hardware stores because in all reality, no one bothers you anymore. It's fantastic. So I'm walking around Lowe's, pushing my buggy. I have a mask on, and I've learned that a mask can do really weird things with your beard. It makes it like stick out all different kinds of direction around the mask. So I look quite creepy, just being honest with you all. But as I'm pushing the cart around, I'm just focused on my blinds, and I look up and I think I see somebody I know, but it's really hard to tell with a mask on. And we kind of have this weird eye-to-eye contact from a distance, and I'm like, I know who that is. Does he know who I am? Because the last time he saw me, I was a buzzed head, clean-shaven kid, so I wasn't sure if he remembered me. And it was a former soccer coach I used to coach with over at South Parkersburg High School. I kind of waved at him. He's like, hey, how you doing? And we sat there for about 10 minutes just sharing life in Lowe's. It was so good. It was so refreshing just to spend time with somebody. Because we long to be in community. We were created to be in community. You go to the story of Genesis, right after God created Adam, God says it is not good for man to be alone. We were created, one, to be in union with God, to be in communion with Him, to interact and worship Him, but also to be in community with one another. One of my favorite writers, and I know Pastor Tony is one of his as well, A.W. Tozer said, we must have union before we can have communion. That our union with Christ, our communion with Him, is the base and the established foundation for our community with one another. That we were designed to be in community. But the problem that this season has exposed, I've actually been excited that it's exposed it. See, I think back of when I was your guys' age, just a little over 10 years ago, this should have been my 10-year high school reunion this summer. Never heard anything about it, so don't know. I doubt it's happening, obviously, but also just School of Champions, you dropped the ball. I haven't heard anything about 10-year reunion, but that's okay. I really wasn't wanting to go anyways. But I think about 10, 15 years ago, when I was in junior high, when I was in high school, that was the real beginning of social media. We had MySpace. Now, some of you guys have no idea what MySpace is, but we had MySpace, we had AIM, that's AOL Instant Messenger for some of you guys who have no idea what I'm talking about. We had the beginning of Facebook, but even then when Facebook was created, it was only for college students. And so most of us, when we got it, we would lie about our ages just so we could have a Facebook. But it was the beginning stages. And shortly after the launching of those movements, those platforms, people became more and more isolated. And then you throw in text messaging was created. I still remember T9 texting, for some of you guys who remember that, where you had to hit every single button multiple times just to get a text to go through. It's called T9 texting. And all of that factors in to a problem that we see, that people think they can take what is good in the aspects and factors and all facets of community and find it online. They can find it wherever. And what we've seen in the last several years is the opposite. You can't find it. You can't find true community on Facebook. Yes, you can be part of a Facebook group. You can have thousands upon thousands of friends, but they don't know you. They don't know your hurts. They don't know your pains. They don't know your struggles. You don't know their pains. Sometimes you don't even know their name. I mean, just 2 years ago, I purged my Facebook and got rid of over 700 people. If I haven't interacted with you in the last couple of years, I don't really know if I want to see what you post and what you cook for breakfast that morning. But we've longed for community and we thought we could find it there, but we're never satisfied. Or we think, okay, I got Instagram. I have so many thousands of followers who like my picture, and every time they like my picture, I get a dopamine spike where I just feel really good about myself and my insecurities disappear for a second because I put the right filter on and they liked it or they commented on it. But yet you still feel unsatisfied. Or you think just because you have enough followers on Twitter, if you still use Twitter, if you have enough friends that you can send snaps back and forth with, and your entire life longing for community, you realize that you've been living your entire life in isolation. And isolation is never a good place to be. If you want to quote Genesis again, it's not good for man to be alone. And a lot of this season now, when we've actually had to been forced into isolation. Some of you have not been able to spend time with family. Some of you have not been able to spend time with your friends. Some of you actually have been forced to be in isolation. There are people within our faith family who, because of travel, because of whatever circumstances, they've not been able to spend time with family. They've had to be in quarantine, self-isolation for days on end. And isolation is never a good place to be. Isolation can bring a lot of different things into our minds, such as depression, stress, anxiety, sorrow. I think about the time in my life where I felt most isolated. It was about 8 years ago. I had left Marshall University. I had dropped out. It was a very difficult season of life, and a few months later I found myself working at a car dealership in Huntington. I was selling Hyundais, and it was December, and I could not get home for Christmas. I was able to drive home because I had to work the 24th. I was able to leave after work at 5, drive home, and got to church in time at 7 in Parkersburg. Went to Christmas Eve service, spent the time with family. We do our Christmas on Christmas Eve instead of Christmas morning. And we did all of our opening presents that day. We did everything. And then I had to turn around and go back because everyone buys cars on Christmas Day, is what I was told. And so I spent Christmas Day from 10 to 5 at a desk. There's 4 of us in the room. They said we'll have a lot of traffic today. We'll have a lot of phone calls. People want to buy cars at Christmas. It's not true. Maybe somewhere else, but not where I was, because the phone never rang. No one ever stopped by. No one came to get a car. They let us go home 2 hours early because we had not seen anybody at all. And on that day, my parents drove down from Parkersburg, and they pulled in, and they came in just to say hi because they were on their way to Nashville, where my brother Brian was still living at the time, to spend time with him. They were going down to be with family. I could not spend my Christmas with family. I was isolated. I was all alone. I came back to my apartment that night. My roommate, Jimmy, at the time, had already gone home for the holidays. He was going to be gone for a total of a month and a half. I did not get to see anybody. It was just me in an empty apartment with nothing but my thoughts and my depression. And that moment caused me to sink into a deep, dark depression. A depression that spanned over a few months before I finally had to ask for help. It all started in isolation. I longed to be with family. I longed to be with somebody, with family, with friends. And ultimately, I ended up quitting that job. It wasn't a great season. It was not a great season for me. I had no backup plan when I quit. I just wanted to be with people. But that's the problem. We are never meant to be in isolation. We were meant to be in community. And some of you are experiencing that right now. Some of you all feel isolated. Maybe your siblings are off at college and they can't come home, or your siblings live across the country, or you're an only child, or whatever reasons you feel isolated. Hopefully, this season has shown you that we were meant to be in community, because we now know Zoom calls do not count. It is a burden to talk to somebody on a Zoom call. Joe Lizer, if you were watching, I was meeting with all the different youth leaders together, and I met with Joe and C-Dub one night on Zoom call, and Joe was cooking a grilled cheese, and every time he hit the spatula, the microphone on my end would stop, and CW was hearing me talk like this, and it was terrible. I finally said, Joe, I got to mute you. I hate Zoom calls. They're terrible. They are awful. I long to be with people in person. Same thing with this camera. I hate speaking to a camera. I'd rather speak to you all together. But hopefully, this season is showing you that we are best when we are together. We've returned to Ecclesiastes chapter 4. Ecclesiastes, written by Solomon, wrote this in chapter 4, verses 9 through 12. I love this. It says, 2 are better than 1, because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who is alone when he falls, and has not another to lift him up. I want you to remember that. It says again, if 2 lie together, they keep warm, and has not another to lift him up. If two lie together, they keep warm, but how can one keep warm alone? And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, two will withstand him. A threefold cord is not quickly broken. I love that. A cord of 3 strands is not easily broken, as the NIV says. So he says there, it is good for man to be together. It is not good for man to be alone. We cannot be alone. If you go actually out to California, this is a dream of mine. If you go out to the redwoods of California, you see these massive 300-foot redwood trees, some as old as 2,500 years. It's amazing, these monstrous trees. I long to see. It's one of my bucket list items. And maybe because I'm a nerd, because also in the redwoods is where they shot Return of the Jedi when they're on the forest moon of Endor. I just went full on nerd for you, some of you guys. But also in the more recent Planet of the Apes movies, again, nerd, they shot a lot of that. That's where Caesar led all the other apes into the redwoods. I love that. But did you know that as large as those trees are, their roots are actually really shallow? Redwoods can grow up to 300 feet, but they have really shallow roots. But one of the things that have happened over time, even though they have shallow roots, their root systems can actually spread out over 100 feet in every direction, just not south. They can spread out in east and west, and they start intertwining with other redwood trees. Their branches start growing into one another. So when a redwood tree falls, it can be sustained by the surrounding trees. Just like what he wrote here. 2 are better than 1 because they have a good reward for their toil. Verse 10, for if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But how can one be lifted up if he is alone? See, today, if we're being honest with ourselves, a lot of us have really shallow root systems. We're very fragile in our faith. We're very fragile in our life. We struggle. We have these different concerns in our life, and we're looking to be held up, and so easily do we fall in this life. It's like when we're riding a bike for the first time and we just constantly hit the pavement, bounce our face off the rocks, and just over and over and over again, longing to be able to walk, longing to be able to ride, longing to be able to stay upright. We need others to hold us up. Just like that tree system, we may have shallow roots, but we need to realize that there are others around us who we can grow together with, who we can grow with, as we can grow to one another, as we can grow closer to one another, as we start to strengthen one another, as we start to lift each other up. That's the entire purpose of community, to do life together, to share life together, to hold one another up, to hold one another accountable, to love one another, to encourage one another. That's the entire intentions of community. That's what God desires for us as Christians, to grow with one another, to strengthen each other, to hold one another accountable, to lift one another up. That's his purpose for us. How's your root system? Ask yourself as you self-examine, how is your root system? Is it shallow? If it's shallow, but man, I hope you have someone to hold you up. If it's deep, that's great. Help someone else. Help someone else stay upright. We need to be together. We are not meant to be in isolation. Because when we are together, we are stronger, we're more loving, we're more supportive, but also we accomplish a lot more. If you go over to the story of Acts, when the church first started, it's a beautiful story in Acts chapter 2. Just that time, there was only probably 120 followers of Jesus. After he ascended into heaven, they saw him leave, and their number started to grow. But on this day, I love what it says in Acts 2, verse 42. It says, and they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to the fellowship, to the breaking of bread, and the prayers. And awe came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles. And all who believed were together and had all things in common. And they were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all as any had need. And day by day, attending the temple together, breaking bread in their homes, they received their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God, having favor with all the people. And listen to this. And the Lord added to their number daily, day by day, those who were being saved. All these people came from different backgrounds, came from different circumstances, they came from different needs. But they were all united in one purpose. What was that purpose? Jesus. His mission, his saving power, his transforming power. And they knew that they were united in Him. So they grew closer to God and they grew closer together. So they devoted themselves to the teachings of the apostles, to the prayers, to worship, to spending time in God's Word, but also spending time with one another. They broke bread together. They served together. They worshiped together. They lived life together. And amazing things happen when the Christian church comes together. When the Christian church comes together and it is strengthened and it is unified, amazing things happen, and the Lord adds to the number daily those who are being saved. Because in that moment, we lay aside our preferences, we lay aside our desires, our wants, and we get united behind the purpose and mission of Jesus. And we realize we can accomplish a lot more together than we can alone. We might think we have the ability to go out and take this world and serve it and save it by ourselves, but that in all reality, we won't do anything. We might get a few here and there, but in all reality, when we come together as a faith family, a lot of things can happen. We were meant to be together. We were not meant to be alone. I want to encourage you right now. Think about your community. What is your community? Who are the 5 people you spend life with? I'm not talking about mom, dad, brother, sister. I'm just talking about your friends. Who are the 5 people you spend your life with? Who are the 5 people that you spend your life with? When you consider your root system, if you were to fall, are those 5 people going to be the ones who hold you up? The ones who strengthen you, the ones who encourage you, the ones who spur you on to maturity and growth, as we saw in Hebrews? Are they going to encourage you and love on you and have compassion with you, to hold you accountable, hold your feet to the fire, to refine you? If they're not, what are you doing? Why are you spending time with them? The other side of the question I have, why are you spending time in isolation? Why are you looking for community in everything other than community? You can't find it online. Just because you have 1,000 followers doesn't mean you have 1,000 friends. Just because you have 1,000 likes on your Facebook or your Instagram post doesn't mean they all love you. Find community in community. Find community in the body of believers. One of my favorite pastors, authors, his name's Carey Nieuwhof, and Tony had us read a book by his a couple years ago called Lasting Impact. And in that it says, we can never out Disney, but nobody should ever be able to out community the church. Meaning we can try to be flashy, we can try to do all this great production, but we'll never keep up with the trends of Disney and the likes of Netflix and all that stuff. But no one should ever out community the church. If you long for community, find it in the body of Christ. Find it with those who are opening their arms to you. If you want community, find it in the body of Christ. The ones who share in the same purposes, the same mission, who understand what you are going through, and who believe in the one who has gone through everything that you and I have gone through, who can empathize with us, and so therefore we can empathize with one another. I pray that you can find it here in this youth ministry. I pray that you can find it here when we step back into life at the end of this season, that you'll be able to find community, you'll be able to love that community, you'll be able to be encouraged by that community, and therefore be strengthened by it. We can do a lot more together than we can alone. Don't sacrifice community for likes or Snapchats or anything else. Find faith, find friends, find your family and community. I'm going to pray for you guys, and hopefully you guys have a great night in your Zoom calls with your small groups. Father God, we thank you for all you've said and done in your word. Thank you for the promises of your Son. Thank you for the promises of your word. And God, tonight as we gather together, we gather as a faith family, united in our purposes, united in your Son, united in our love for him. And tonight we ask that you challenge us to show us our community. Show us where we are lacking. Show us where we are longing for something better. And show us that we can only find it, one, in you, that you are enough, but then we can find it in Christian community. God, may we be strengthened, may we be refined by our friends and our loved ones. In your Son's name we pray. Amen. In 2 weeks, on the 31st, we will not have Summit next week, but in 2 weeks, it's all about our seniors. We're going to call it Senior Night. Seniors, I'll be texting you guys in the next 2 weeks to ask you guys to help me out to make that night something really special for you. If you attend FBCW, on the 31st, that morning will be graduation Sunday. Let's celebrate and honor all of our graduates and show them what community looks like. You guys have a great night. We'll see you all soon.